And we're live. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us at the next episode of our AFBE Leadership Talk Show. Today, I have with me co-host Bumi Olabi. Thank you for joining me today, and a special guest as well, Sope Abelusi, who will be speaking to us on this very exciting topic, stepping outside your comfort zone. I look forward to this event. So just a brief housekeeping rules. If you have any questions or you have anything to contribute during the course of this event, please post your questions on the chat group. If I miss them, Bumi will pick on them and ask our guests the questions as well. If you have contributions, whatever it is that you want to say, because we're talking about a very sensitive, well, I say sensitive because it's something that, can either help us to grow and in our personal and careers. So this is a very super exciting topic, and I hope that everyone who joins here contributes and benefits from this topic today. So I will jump up to Sope. Sope, it's lovely to have you today. Thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure. I've been looking forward to this conversation and talking to you today.
That's very great. Just to introduce, Sope, I'm pretty sure you're going to do a better job introducing yourself. Sope is a husband, a father, and a founder of Mindset Shift. It's a leadership development program and a culture disruptor organization that helps people to, go beyond their current selves and establish themselves to be better versions of themselves. So, Per, if you may do the pleasure, please tell us about you, tell us about yourself. What don't we know about Sope?
Ooh, what don't you know? That's a very interesting one. I guess I'll start with, so yeah, I'm fond of Mindset Shift. I work a lot with a lot of leaders in corporate organizations and founders and entrepreneurs, basically helping them to move and shift out of their current mentality, what's currently keeping them stuck. And I also do a lot of work around culture change, inclusion, and psychological safety. Prior to that, I spent probably the best part of 12 to 15 years working in corporate. So I worked in automotive, technology companies, consultancy, leading teams in the UK and Europe and in Asia as well. And I originally started off as a chartered accountant before I moved into different lanes and explored different opportunities to what I do right now. And something you don't know about me. I'm probably gonna say, one of my roles when I worked in Jaguar Land Rover, me and two other people actually helped to design one of their IT software programs from scratch that they now use worldwide in all the organizations. So that's something you probably don't know about me. And again, had nothing to do with my current role at that point in time, but I just had a love for IT, and it was something that had the opportunity to get involved with. And yeah, we built it, we designed the whole thing, coded the whole thing from start to finish. And it was a very exhausting, but also something I'm proud to say I was able to do.
What was your official role at Jaguar Land Rover?
So my official role was finance. So it was working in finance in a variety of different projects. So from working in warranty to working in manufacturing to working in design and project management before I moved to the commercial side of things. So I held a number of different roles in the time that I was there.
Okay, so an accountant who gets involved in IT to help them develop their whole IT system. Well, that's quite interesting. Um, Apart from the job roles that you've had, tell us more about Mindset Shift. What do you do at Mindset Shift? I know you've just touched on it, changing the mindset, psychological, confidence and all of that, but can you tell us much more about what you do there?
Yeah, certainly. Fundamentally speaking, it's split into two. So I work with leaders doing a lot of coaching. And the reason why I focus a lot around mindset is everything that we do, our energy goes where our thoughts go, and our thoughts come from our mindset. So for you to be able to gain a level of self-awareness about who you are, your strengths, your weaknesses, to be able to understand how you show up, you need to be able to understand your mindset. And when you can actually change that, that actually enables you then to be able to take that extra step. That's why I do a lot of work with leaders. A very good example is last year when the pandemic hit. A lot of leaders are used to sending emails to their team. At that point in time, that's not what people needed. People needed their leaders to step up and come to camera like this and talk so they can hear their words and feel a lot more assured. Even though what you're saying is, I don't know what's going on, I don't know what the future is going to hold, but there's something about being able to visually see someone and hear someone do that. A lot of leaders were actually scared to do that because that's not their norm. Some of them did not like how they sounded. Some of them don't want to be on camera. It was just very, very uncomfortable for them. But part of shifting their mindset was around, actually, this is not about you. Part of your role as a leader is to lead your people, especially in times such as this. And that means you put yourself in situations where it might be uncomfortable for you, but the more that you do it, the more you get better at it, number one. But number two, you also recognize the fact that this is not about you, it's about your organization. And I help leaders in that period of time be able to turn the way they're looking things around, and now they just get on camera and doing it regularly because that's how we live and breathe anyway. But that's such an example of what it takes for you to shift your mindset. And then that flows into the organization and culture. So when we're talking about making changes in an organization, it's not easy. It's very, I talk about the fact that I help disrupt cultures because we're basically starting from scratch. We are ripping up what has not worked for years, and we're doing something that actually helps your people to grow, to develop, that you put your people first, that you actually practice what you preach when you talk about inclusion, when you talk about equity, when you talk about psychological safety. When you have those jobs where you go in and they're like, oh yeah, we like people that think outside the box, and then you come in and they're trying to put you in that same box. We're ripping all of that up to make sure that you're actually practicing what you preach. But then that requires a cultural change. So you work with the leaders first, you get them on board, and then you make that change within the organization to do everything I've just kind of talked about.
What it sounds to me is, early on in this year, at the start of, was I think middle of last year, we had a speaker who talked about crisis leadership. And what you're saying actually toes the line of crisis leadership, where, people want to see their leaders step up. How do you deal with crisis within an organization, especially in the economy? How do you deal with that crisis? And people actually want to relate with you. And certainly what you're saying about that mindset shift is very important, because I think, the battle for dominance starts from the mind. The mind needs to be in the right place before you can proceed or progress in life or in anything. Okay, let's start jumping into the topic. Stepping outside your comfort zone. I think you've kind of laid the ground there, that everything starts with the mind. Yeah. But I want us to first of all understand what is a comfort zone for an individual, or from an individual's perspective. What would you say is a comfort zone?
I would say it's a place where it's safe, it's secure, it's nice, it's easy, it's a beautiful place that nothing actually grows, because it's very, very predictable. There's no real stress, and it's somewhere that you can feel you're in 100% control of your environment. Now, we all need comfort zones, don't get me wrong. We all need to have that place where where we can actually recharge, where we can just don't have to worry about anything, we don't have to make any decisions, where we can just stay and be. It's necessary for us as human beings. But the problem is 90% of people make that place their permanent way of living. And that's why it's a problem. Because if you're in a state where you're not growing, you're not developing, you're not moving forward, you're not really living, are you? You're just existing. And that's why stepping outside your comfort zone is very, very important. That's why it's important for you to actually be able to recognize that actually there are times when I need to be in here, but I only do that at a minimum amount of time. I don't permanently live in here. I need to step outside of that and be in other zones in my life that actually help me to move forward.
Wow. I only got one definition from there. My comfort zone is a place where I don't grow. I think that's a way of looking at it, because I mean, yes, you can have a comfort zone, a place where you can go and rest and just chill, but ultimately, if you're within your comfort zone, there is no growth. It means you just exist. And that's what I'm getting from what you've just said. It's a place of you're just existing. There's no growth. Therefore, there's no change. And there's no change, nothing exciting happens.
I mean, I was going to say a good example is knowing when you're at work and you have someone that complains and complains and complains about how bad things are. And you're like, okay, so why don't you do anything about it? And they're like, I don't want to. But they were back there the next day tomorrow to complain. Because as bad as that thing is, or as bad as that job or that situation is, there is a fear that actually exists that stops them from moving next. That's your comfort zone. It's that space where you want to make some changes. You want to do something different in your life, but you are too scared to be able to do that. And therefore you naturally just retreat and be like, it's a path of least resistance. So I'll just keep staying here. That's what the comfort zone is.
You've mentioned something, and we're going to come back and touch on it. You've said fear. Fear can keep people in a comfort zone. But before we go there, a question I have is, why should we step outside our comfort zone? You've kind of touched on it, but I want us to address this point so that it is very specific and very intentional.
See, in every single area of your life, if you really want to live your life, live your best life, as people tend to say, you need to be able to step outside of your comfort zone. Because in a relationship, for example, if you're gonna go and talk to that person that you're interested in, it's gonna be a little bit, you're gonna be nervous about it. But let's say you have that conversation, and then let's say you get married. To have a real sustainable relationship with that person, you're going to be constantly stepping outside your comfort zone. Why? Because you need to be asking and saying certain things in your relationship. Those who don't do that, they end up having a relationship that doesn't work out or leads to divorce. In your work life, it's exactly the same. You can actually be very, very mediocre and not move forward within your career, because to move forward within your career means you have to push out of what is comfortable. You have to push out of what is the norm. That's why you need to step outside your comfort zone. So either as in your relationship, in your professional career, in your business, even personally for yourself, you need to be able to push yourself to step outside your comfort zone, because the comfort zone can look like, I enjoy having McDonald's every single day. That's comfortable. That's easy. It's fast food. You get it in, you order your Uber Eats, you relax, you watch some TV. That's a great comfort zone to live in. But actually, is that the best thing for you? Is that the healthiest choice for you? You can go out and you can go for a walk, and you can choose not to. So it's those kind of little things where in every single area of your life, you need to learn how to be able to say, actually, I know this is not where I want to be. This is where I want to be is not where I'm currently existing right now. And therefore, that means I need to step outside. I need to stop doing what I've done day in and day out and do something different. We are creatures of habit. And our comfort zone will keep us in a very habitual, automatic way of working and existing. It's like the way our brain works when we start driving a car, when you drive to work, you don't even think about it anymore. It's automatic because it's pre-wired into your brain. That's because that's, in a sense, that's a very, very comfort zone way of looking at things. But when you want to go to a different location, you have to actually think, you have to actually concentrate, you have to be very intentional. That's the difference.
Okay. This is interesting. I want to know, because for some people, certainly stepping outside the comfort zone means, there's something to gain. And if there's something to gain, then you make that extra effort to step outside your comfort zone. If there's nothing to gain, you stay within your comfort zone. So what would you say are the perceived benefits or the benefits, or what can you gain from stepping outside your comfort zone? So I'm looking at it from a point of view of, you're an individual, you're in your workplace. Let's picture the workplace. You are a senior management, a senior engineer. You have a very comfortable salary. You're being paid well, and you have either an opportunity to progress beyond that, or rather, you want to have an opportunity to progress beyond that, but that opportunity doesn't seem to exist. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How would you convince such a person to step outside his comfort zone when he wants to progress into an executive role, but that position or that opportunity doesn't exist? Yeah. But he's comfortable regardless where he is, but will still like to progress past, that barrier into some form of like an executive role. What should such a person, you know, be thinking? What will be the benefit of them stepping outside their comfort zone, or doing things to step outside their comfort zone? In other words, should they leave their jobs, or should they just stay there? Or should they move to more progressive areas, or should they just stay stagnant where they are?
So you just said the right word. You said he's comfortable, but he's not happy. And the reason why I can say that person is not happy is because they still want to do something else. Even though they are comfortable, even though they have the money and the title, they know there is more that they're capable of doing. They know that they want to be challenged. They know that they want to improve and they want to do something better. So that person's already in that space of mind where it's like, yeah, I'm comfortable and I can probably stay here for the next year or two, but I'm going to board out my brains. And therefore, I'm not going to probably do the best I can do because I'm not being pushed and I'm being challenged. So now it's like, okay, so what is it that is driving you to that next role? And if you're not going to get it in your current environment, what are you willing to do to get that role? What would that role actually look like? And those are kind of things you now start to break down. Okay, hypothetically speaking, for me to get to that next role, it's not going to happen in this company. That means I need to go outside of this company that I'm used to. They know me, they love me, all that kind of stuff. But I need to go to a different company potentially to get that next role. And you know what? What happens in that scenario for most of us will be, wow, that's scary. I might go somewhere and they might not like me. I might go somewhere and I might get sacked. I might go somewhere and I might not be as great as I think I am. In fact, I might go into that new role because it's something that's brand new. And because I'm not a subject matter expert in them, because I'm not so skilled at it anymore, I might not actually thrive and be as good as I am right here. And you now have that back and forth conversation within your mind. But then ultimately it comes down to, what if I stay? How would I feel? And that's the difference. You can actually focus on the negative and the fear and all that kind of stuff. But then it's like, how would you feel if you stayed here? And if you're gonna say, you know what, and conversations I've had in the past, I'm not gonna be very, very productive. I'm gonna be very lethargic. In fact, there have been occasions where I've seen people have stayed in roles because they don't want to necessarily move and get outside the comfort zone. And it's had a knock-on impact on their personal relationships. Because there's something inside of you that's like, go and do it. There's something inside of you that's saying you're settling. There's something inside of you that's saying you're limiting yourself. There's something inside of you that says you are capable. And bearing in mind, these are all inside your brain. No one's listening to you. These are conversations you're having. And then it actually shows up when someone else gets a promotion or you see someone do something amazing and you get this hint of jealousy come about you where you should be congratulating that person, but yet you feel anger towards that person and you start wondering, like, what is that feeling? And all of that is because you know that you are not doing what you've been called to do. You know that you're settling. You know that you've put a limit on yourself on what you're capable of. And therefore, that's where you now go to, okay, you know what, I really want to do this. And that's why you push outside. That's the benefit. That's what you stand to gain. It's the living. I remember Marcus Aurelius once said, it's not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live. And that's what it is. You don't want to stay stuck because you're not living. It's not happy. It might be comfortable, but it's not happy. It might be comfortable, but you're just existing. So therefore you want to live your life. And then there's also the other side of things, which is actually you might be living an example for other people. So with me, when I've taken a lot of leaps in my career, but the last one I did, there were a couple of things that were wrapped around why I decided to step outside my comfort zone. One, it's as a husband and father, I want to live authentically and live by example. And it's anything I remember growing up as kids, when your parents would tell you certain things, and in your head you're thinking, yeah, but are you doing that though? Are you living that way? I never wanted to be in that position where I'm having a conversation with my kids and they can point and say that, Daddy, you haven't done that. I never want to have a conversation with my wife and she'd be like, yeah, but you're not modeling that behavior, because I'm very much around being authentic. So those were kind of things, some of the things that came into deciding to take that leap of faith and step outside of my comfort zone, even though it was where I was at and what I was offered was very, very comfortable. And a lot of people have been happy with that, but I knew I was meant for so much more. And if I stayed there, I'll stay stuck. If I stayed there, I will not be happy. If I stayed there, I will not be the man that I've been called to be. And there's those kind of feelings and thoughts that kind of come together to be like, okay, I'm going to drive forward and stop living in my comfort zone. I'm going to drive forward and move towards freedom, move towards actually living a proper life that I've been called to do.
Before we start taking questions from the audience, I think this fits nicely and takes us nicely into the next question that I have. Fear. Fear and the barriers that stop you from, moving outside your comfort zone. At the top being fear, because a lot of people, when you're comfortable and the fear of the unknown, you don't know what you're stepping into. Like what you said, you might be stepping into an unknown territory, a new environment, new people to work with, who you've established relationships where you're coming from, and now you have to move to go start off new relationships where you're going to. How are you going to be perceived, and how you're going to deal with the emotional anxiety that comes with the whole change of environment, So, but before we start picking up on questions, talk about the barriers to moving outside your comfort zone.
The first one when it comes to moving outside your comfort zone, that fear can grip you. That fear can really, really hold you back, because you start to then think of so many scenarios which 9 times out of 10 will never happen. So you can start to think, for example, okay, if I step outside my comfort zone, I use the example we're using of a job. In fact, let me use a different one. So many years ago, when I started my my CMA, started outside of my grad scheme. When I moved into the company that took me on as a graduate, I went into the HR and I was like, oh, by the way, I started this this course and I want you guys to cover the cost of the course I already started. The person at HR said to me, we've never done that before, and why would we actually pay for something you started before you joined this company? And I said, why not? You've asked me to come in, you've asked me to do this, I'm ready to do something. So I know you haven't done it before, but go and find out and check. And she's like, okay, weird request, but she went away and did it, and she came back. She's like, okay, we've never done this before, but willing to pay you. And it was like £5,000 at that point in time. Bearing in mind, I was just young guy, married, little kid, so that was a lot of money. But it was, before I asked them that question, there were a number of questions that came up in my head where, if I say this and I'm just starting, I'm still within my probation period, they can get rid of me. If I say this might limit me. There were so many different things that came up for me. But the most important thing that came up for me in that period was actually, if I don't ask, I will never know.
Exactly.
And it's that bit right there where we get stuck in the way our brains work, in that initial fear of playing out that scenario in our head without actually having any evidence about it. So we will talk about the job that we might lose. We might talk about the relationship we might never have. We might talk about the friendships and all that kind of stuff. And we'll keep on having those thoughts, but we'll never actually test it out to see what is the reality. But those are the kind of things that happen, number one. The second one I'll go to will be around friends. You will have people that love and care for you, but there will also be people that will keep you stuck. And I'm talking from friends to parents to teachers, tutors, mentors, whatever, where what they're saying to you, they're not necessarily saying it from a place of trying to keep you down, but they're saying it from their own place of insecurity. So you've had it where, culturally speaking, as for me, for example, as a Nigerian, the linear route is you study, you go to you get a job, you carry on doing what you're doing. When it came to stepping outside of into entrepreneurship, it's like, what are you doing? Like you've got a very, very good job. You've got a very, very great offer. You've got a family to look after. What are you doing? What is this about? And I had a lot of conversations around me doing something completely different to a lot of people because, and they didn't quite get it. They didn't quite understand it. I had colleagues tell me what I was doing was crazy. I had friends who I've known for the best part of 15, 20 years. They're like, are you sure you want to do this? And all those negative voices can very, very, very easily keep you in that fixed state, keep you in your comfort zone. And they're saying it because of their own experiences, because they have fears and insecurities in their lives. They can't see and have a different perspective. And they put that on you. And then you now listen to them, add that to your fears, combine together, you stay stuck. That's why you have to be very, very careful around who you tell your dreams to, who you tell your desires to. And a great example was the woman who created Spanx, Blakely. And she said when she first started out, she didn't tell her friends or her family for a whole year. She has $1 billion company, but she didn't tell her friends and family. She was like, if I told them, they will have stopped me from creating this thing.
It's amazing. And in trying to grow, you have yourself to deal with. You have your own internal fears, you have your own, internal insecurities to deal with. But you also have external voices, and these come from people around you. And the funny part is, talking about sometimes, parents projecting their fears onto us. And sometimes they always start off with an adage, that even puts you more into fear, that plunges the hole deeper than it already is, and they make you think like, oh, they've seen everything, all these adages where they say, if a kid stands on top of an Iroko tree, the kid will not see as far as an adult who can see very, further, or their parents who can see further than they can. And that really helps. It goes a long way to limiting us, and doesn't help us to grow. Let's take some questions from the audience.
Thank you for that. First question I'll ask is growth measured only externally? And how would you define getting to know yourself better?
Growth is not measured. In fact, growth for me starts internally before it goes external. Growth is something that you need to be able to capture for yourself. So a great example I will use to actually explain that a little bit further. Number of now in part of my morning routine is I go for runs in the morning and all of that, and now I enjoy it. But for probably the best part of 10 to 15 years, I hated long distance running. Like, it was not my thing. When I was at school, I did short distance, 120 meters, that was my thing. But I could not understand the whole point of going for a long distance run. It just didn't make any sense to me. And there was a fear that I had around that thing, which I didn't really understand until probably about 5-6 years ago, where I was like, I literally sat down one morning, I was like, what is this thing about me? And I started to unpack the whole thing around long distance running, around the fear, around insecurity, around looking a certain way, around acting like an idiot, around failing, all of those different things. I literally started to unpack all of that. And then I got to the point of like, okay, right, I'm just going to do this thing and start to understand and go through my fear. Now, that had nothing to do with what's happening externally with everyone else. All that conversation happened inside of me for me to be able to understand myself better, to understand why this thing had a hold of me for so many years, and why it was important for me to actually break through that and overcome that fear I had, rather than me staying in my comfort zone. And that's what it is. It has to start inside of you. You can't, if you focus on external growth, that will come and go. External growth a lot of times comes with external validation from other people, which again comes and goes. You need something to start inside of you. So regardless of what's going on outside, inside you know that this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. Inside you know that, okay, this is where I started, this is where I want to get to. And every day you can be like, actually, I've taken little steps to achieve or to move forward in where I'm trying to get to. That's why that growth internally inside of you starts. And that also helps you with the second question, of starting to recognize certain things. So a good way of actually doing that is tracking. So I talk a lot around journaling and around the power of journaling. So whether you want to do a bullet journal, whether you want to do it once a week or whatever, but it's a way for you be able to measure and be like, okay, here's where I was and here's where I've moved to. Here are the actions I've taken that I'm validating inside my head daily that I'm actually moving forward. It doesn't matter whether it's little by little. Incremental steps matter. Incremental steps make a massive difference to help you to accomplish and to gain that self-awareness.
It's interesting. I think I might maybe call you after this so you can tell me how to overcome my fear of running, because certainly that is a very, very big fear for me. For one, there's a question here that seems to catch my eye, and it says it's from Stacy. It says it's exhausting to be outside of your comfort zone all the time. How do you balance this with becoming really great at things and comfortable, in brackets?
Ooh, uncomfortable. Yes, it is exhausting to be outside of your comfort zone all the time, which is why you shouldn't. I always say you're never outside of your comfort zone all the time in all areas of your life. So I might be pursuing things in my profession, in my work, where I'm outside of my comfort zone. But in my personal life, I won't necessarily be outside of my comfort zone. And it's those kind of ways where if you're doing every single area of your life, that is exhausting, that is draining. And that goes back to what I said at the start. You don't have any space for you to just take some downtime and to take some recharge time, which is very, very, very important to you. So it's trying to make sure that you have some areas of your life where you do have some level of consistency, some level of comfort zone that you can actually help and you can fall back on. Now, in the other areas where, so what's the second part of that?
How do you balance this with becoming really great at things and comfortable?
So one of the phrases I use personally time and time again, which I know drives a lot of people crazy, but is learning how to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And the reason why that phrase really resonates with me is because when you are learning something new, and this kind of goes into the different kind of zones when you talk about fear zone, learning zone, and growth zone. So when you're in that kind of learning zone where you stepped out of the fear zone, you're in a growth mindset kind of mentality. And in that kind of space, you're seeing everything as I'm a student. You're seeing it as I know there's a very, very good chance that I'm going to try something, I'm going to fail, but that's part of the process. You're seeing it as actually, I am just going to be intentional and show up day in and day out and be okay with making minimal progress, be okay with connecting with people, be okay with developing new skills. Those are the little things that actually help you to be able to get to that point where you start thinking different, you start looking at situations differently, where when I'm in that zone or in that learning growth mindset mentality kind of thing, if I know that there's a chance that there's a 1% chance or there's a 9 out of 10% chance that if I do that thing, I might fail at it, I'm still going to do it anyway. Because I start thinking to myself, if I fail at that, I will learn. And then that 9% or that 9 out of 10 chance now goes down to 7 out of 10 next time I do it. And it goes down to 4. And it's those kind of way of approaching where you become more comfortable with being uncomfortable. You become more comfortable with being in a sense, the dumbest person in the room, where it's all about, I'm a student. And that's a great space to live, because when you have that, you have a level of humility that opens up doors for other people to surround you and actually help you to move to where you want to get to. When you approach things from a place of fear, ego comes into place, and that stops people, the right people, from coming around you. But when you have that learning zone mentality, that growth zone mentality, that humility zone mentality, where you're like, I don't know everything I'm doing right now, people will be like, actually, I see what you're doing. I see what you're trying to do. Let me come beside you and let me help you to get there. Those are the kind of things that help you to become more comfortable being uncomfortable.
There's a saying that those who are successful in business, entrepreneurship, anything, inventions, and anything like that, they become very comfortable with failure. They don't accept failure, but they're comfortable with failure. So that means, we need to get to a state of mind where even if we don't succeed, we need to be comfortable with the fact that we didn't succeed now, we will succeed tomorrow, and that comes with that persistence and perseverance. I know we touched on this a while ago, and you've just actually touched on this just now. But what is beyond your comfort zone? Because I know you've divided this into 3 specific categories that we can talk about. So what should someone expect beyond the comfort zone?
So after your comfort zone, you step into your fear zone. So this is an area where you're just scared. You're worried, you're anxious, you're thinking, oh my gosh, what's going to happen if I now that I've left my comfort zone. So there's a lack of confidence that happens. You could easily find excuses that make you actually step back into your comfort zone. That's what happens in your fear zone. This is that area where you have people all around you who, whatever they say, like we just talked about with the family or friends or mentors or whatever, they say certain things to you and you can be easily affected by their opinion. That's the fear zone. But when you push past that fear zone, you now go into that learning zone I just talked about. This is where a lot of us should be like, where you start really, really coming alive, because you're dealing with challenges and problems. You're acquiring new skills. And this, when you stay in here, this now becomes your new comfort zone, because it's a new mindset. It's a new way of looking at life. It's a new way of approaching things. So rather than going from your comfort zone to your fear zone to your learning zone, when you get to that learning zone, this becomes your normal default area of operating. And then this now leads you to your last area, which is like your growth zone. Now, this is where you start really like stretching yourself. So you start living your dreams, you start conquering objectives, you start setting new goals, you start stretching and growing and developing. This is where the purpose that I'm talking about, where you really, really come alive, where you're adaptable, where you're resilient, that's where your foundations have been formed. So when things happen to you in life, you can easily deal with it. When things happen to you in life, you can easily, you might shake a little bit, but because you got a solid foundation, you're not going to break, you're not going to snap, you're just going to bounce back and keep on going. That's where you now get that difference happening to you. So
when we're in the fear zone, how do we deal with the naysayers? How do we deal with the negative voices? Especially if they're from people very close to us, or people who we, consider and respect, within either within the work environment or within your personal life. How do you deal with the naysayers? Do you just don't even tell them at all and keep quiet and just go, undercover and just do your thing? Or, if you've told them and negative voices have started, pouring in, how do you deal with that? How do you fend yourself and just focus?
It's going to be a mixture. It's going to depend on your situation, because there's going to be a level of understanding that you have about your situation. So at home, you're going to know that actually, if I say certain things to my parents, if I say certain things to this group of friends, this is potentially how they're going to react. And the question you ask, do I really need their voices and input right now? If they tell me something negative, or they say something to me that I don't want to hear, am I going to stop doing what I'm doing, or am I going to keep on going regardless? That's the kind of conversation you need to have with yourself. Even at work, it might be, okay, if I say certain things to these people and I tell them what I'm trying to do, are they going to support me, or are they going to hold me back? And how much weight do those people's opinions carry with my decision-making process? If your friends and your family and your colleagues and your mentor, whatever, if they have carried a lot of weight over the years in your decision-making process, be very, very careful as to what you tell them and when you tell them. So example I just gave with Sarah Blakely, over the years, the people that she had around her, who were her friends and her family, when she speaks to them about certain things, they've had a massive impact on how she makes decisions. And therefore, she's chosen that instant, like, you know what, I want to do this undercover for 12 months, and then I'll tell them. Because she knew that anything they say to her, she would listen to. Therefore, she limited that contact. She limited that conversation just to protect herself. So you also have you have to be very, very intentional, and you have to assess that if I say certain things, how is this going to potentially play out?
Yeah.
You can also have little mini conversations where you can throw up hypotheticals, you can create a scenario and, oh, this person's done this person's done that, and see how those people you have around you react to them and react to that conversation. That can also help you to be able to get a sense of understanding that, okay, there's a chance that they might say something similar to me. And if they did, how would I feel? How would I be able to handle it? And is it going to stop me? Because if it's going to stop you, then you're going to ask yourself, am I still going to tell them? Is this really worth it? And if I feel it's still really worth it, why are you going to put yourself in that situation for?
Okay, so I have a situation. Let me paint a situation for you. So we had a speaker who on this leadership talk who once said, when he got into the company through the grad scheme, he wanted to progress. And so he reached out to his line manager and told him, in X, Y amount of years, this is where I want to be. And fortunately for him, the line manager was very supportive, and they were able to draw out a map, of progression, where he is, what he needed to do, the steps he needed to take, and where he would be in, say, 5 to 10 years. And fortunately for him, he was able to achieve that. Now, what if the reverse is the case, where you don't have a supportive boss or a supportive line manager, and you are very keen on mapping out or having a strategy, growth strategy in place, to help you progress in the company? What do you do if your immediate line manager is not supportive? Do you go to his own boss, or do you go to someone externally who maybe understands the role and can be a career mentor? What do you do in such an instance?
In that instance, you assess the situation and you assess the lay of the land. So if you go into, your manager's not supportive of you, and you go into his boss is an option, what are the potential repercussions that are going to come from that?
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing you need to assess. And then it's also, okay, if this person is not supporting me, what are the things that I know I potentially need to be able to get to that next role? And is this organization actually the best place I want to be able to do that in? Because if he's not supporting me, what's going to happen when I do move on to into that role, into that field, for example? Is this the general culture? Is this how the managers are generally? There's so many different questions that can come up that you can assess. But ultimately, it comes down to, if that is something that you want to do, you actually need to map out what that plan looks like. Now, you're not going to have all the answers. You're not going to be able to fill out all the gaps because you don't know everything. But by you being able to say that, okay, I don't know, I'm an analyst right now, or I'm an engineer right now, and I want to become a senior engineer, and therefore I know there are roughly 3 or 4 things that I need to do to get to that next role. My current manager is not supporting me right now, but there are people externally that I have known, that I've seen their job application on LinkedIn. What will happen if I reach out to the person and have a conversation with them? What's the worst that can happen? And it goes back to what I talked about, that internal thing of taking hold of your career, or taking hold of your life. So many times we wait for other people to step up for us, and we don't step up for ourselves. You need to learn to be like, whatever it takes, I'm willing to do. There's been a number of other people I've worked with, and I've through coaching, or even my own experiences, where I've had leaders and managers in front of me intentionally try to limit my career. And I knew what I was trying to achieve. I knew what I was trying to be capable of. And we had different approaches, or just different things were happening within that organization at that point in time, that they put a limit and ceiling of what I could do. I was willing to step out of that organization and go somewhere else, because I'm not going to let you define me. You know what I'm capable of doing. And that's what I'm saying. When it comes to you and your career, you take hold and take complete ownership. You might not be to blame for your circumstances, but you are to blame for your results. You are to blame for your responsibility that you take. So you might not create that situation with your manager, You might not like it and it's not fair, but that happens day in, day out. However, you do have a choice to make as to how you respond to that situation. You can either stay there and do nothing, or you can circumvent if that's possible, or actually go outside. Because even simpler thing I just said of reaching out to someone random that you do not know and be like, are you willing to help me? You have nothing to lose. They can either ignore you or they say no, and you haven't moved further than you were anyway, but you've actually just gained a new experience. And you knock on so many doors, you find someone and people willing to be like, yeah, I'll help you. Yes, I'll have an hour conversation with you, and you never know what that's going to lead to.
Wow. There's something I picked up on. You are not to blame for your circumstance, but you are held responsible for the results that you achieve. Well, that's a very strong one. Bumi, is there any other questions that we can pick up on?
Yes, please. There's a question from Ikechi here. As a mentor stroke coach, in what kind of scenario would you advise someone to settle, taking into consideration external things outside of one's control and internal personal competence, stonewall limit factors? That's a strong one.
I don't think I would never advise someone to settle. And let me caveat that with, it also depends on timing. So there are times when you might be in situations and it's part of a long-term strategy. So there might be roles that you operate in for a year or 2 or 3, because it helps you to be able to achieve certain things. It helps you to be able to gain particular experience. It helps you to be able to gain particular connections, or even pass whatever certification you're trying to do. But you know it's a short-term move where you have a long-term view in mind. So those kind of things, yes, you might stay. But from a longer-term perspective, I would never say you stay limiting yourself, because you can always learn. The internal things that you just talked about, you can always learn. And we live in an age and a time where, from Google to books to YouTube to Skillshare to so many different platforms that are available, you have access to so much knowledge that there isn't any real reason why you stay limiting yourself. Now, you might not be able to, like I say, your environment will be something completely different where you might not create, but you can create opportunities for yourself. You can think outside of the box. And that's where a lot of the problems I've seen over the years comes from, is that we are so used to staying confined. I said earlier on that my role was, when I did that design the system, my role was finance. But they also knew I enjoyed doing IT projects. And when something came up, I jumped straight for it. When I moved into the commercial side of things, it wasn't what I was brought into that company for, but it was something that I always wanted to do. And I looked at ways and opportunities for me to create and make that role mine. And I started getting involved. Even with a lot of the roles I did, I was doing a lot of stuff with the design and engineering teams. That's not my primary role, but something I had an interest in, is something I was able to learn for myself and then add value by thinking outside of the box. Yeah. And bear in mind, what I'm saying is, there were loads of times where they told me that this is not your role, you shouldn't be doing this, this one you should be doing that, or I'll come up with a brilliant idea about something and I'll get shut down by someone who wasn't comfortable with it. And I had to find a way of either introducing it into the organization where they could see the value from it and then change the narrative, or find a way of even giving it to someone else so they can have it as their idea. But the whole thing was about adding value back in. But you think abstractly, you don't confine yourself, because when you start confining yourself, the world's going to do a very good job of doing that anyway. So you cannot limit yourself. And then when you don't have that mentality, or you don't have that fixed mindset, where you have that growth mindset, where you're learning and you're willing to try new things, you don't limit yourself.
Good. Bumi, any other questions that we have?
Yes. There's a question from Tess. Is it comfort zone a part of a function as a variable, or is it end result of a function? Did you get that?
Not really.
So is comfort zone a part of a function? Is it a variable, or is it end result of a function?
I would say it's a variable. It's a variable rather than the end result. because it's something that you can easily change. And the reason why I would say it's not an end result is your comfort zone will constantly change depending on different areas of your life. When you decide to make it fixed, when you decide to make it permanent, when you decide to ensure for yourself that it's not a variable, that's personally, that only should happen when you're at your deathbed. But there's so many people who make that their life, and then you now get people who are unhappy. You get people who are just in that complaining mode all the time. People who are not willing to do anything because they have chosen just to stay in there rather than make it a variable. They've chosen to make that their end result rather than make it a variable like it should be. So that's where you get that difference. It's a choice that you make. So you decide if you want it to be a variable or if you want it to stay there and that be your end result.
Okay.
I ask for one more.
Okay, yeah.
Yes. This question from Felix Israel. Based on our cultural background as Africans, we tend to shy away from moving out of our comfort zone for fear of being branded as impatient. How did you transition such mindset, or how do you transition such kind of mindset?
Yeah, I hear that. That resonates where you're very ambitious, you have very big goals, and you're told you need to wait your turn. And you know what? There are times when that's correct. There are times when you do need to wait your turn. There are times when there are learnings and experiences that you need to have to be able to move into that role. So it's about you being able to recognize that. But there are also times when it's not about you being impatient. There are times when people are intentionally keeping you down, and you need to then ask yourself, what am I willing to do to get to where I want to get to? I've had the impatience conversation a lot of times when I worked in corporate environments. And as someone who had at that point in time, I started my family young. I had a family, I had two kids and a wife at a very young age. There are so many conversations I had to have with myself and with my wife. I'm like, if I do this, this might be a problem. If I do this, this might not go down well. If I do this, I might get sacked or whatever. But I couldn't stay stuck. I wasn't willing to just listen because I knew I'd validated that conversation. Be like, actually, this is not about me being impatient. I've done my just dues. I've done everything they've asked me to do. And this people or this organization, or this environment I was in at that point in time is intentionally not letting me progress. And therefore I need to do something different. And that involves me doing something outside the box. That involves me leaving, it involved me having certain conversations with certain people, which wasn't necessarily going to go down well, but it had to be done. If not, I'll just stay there. So you have to be able to discern, is there validity in what they're telling you around, this is not your time, and they're telling you to wait and telling you you're impatient, or is there something else behind it? If there's something else behind it, then you need to find a way to either maneuver around that person or move into a completely different environment.
Okay, so we're getting close to the end of this. Just have a few more minutes, and there's something I want you to address for us. And my question is, how do you handle the emotional and mental states that you would be in when moving outside the comfort zone? So in as much as we know that we have, fear, anxiety, all this, how do we handle, this mixed emotions and our mental state to help us keep sane? Because certainly if you're stepping outside your comfort zone, you need to have some form of sanity so you can think clearly and look further ahead. How do you handle that?
By having good habits and routines that help you recharge and refuel you. So I mentioned earlier on that I go for a run. So every day, 6-7 times a week, wake up early morning, have my devotional, go for my run. And for like the first hour of the day, that's me time. And that's me time to be able to think, reflect, process about the day ahead of me, about so many different thoughts that happen in my mind. But it's a time for me to be able to be at one with myself before the world wakes up, before my family wake up, and I have to give them my time. And those times, those moments in the morning, that habit, that routine has become very, very important to me, because it allows me to deal with the, I guess, the emotional side of things, the mental side of things. It allows me to be able to think through situations clearly. And when you want to step outside of your comfort zone, you need to get your own habit that works for you. It doesn't have to be exercise. It could be as simple as reading. It could be as simple as having conversations with some great people. It can be as simple as going for a walk. It could just be as simple as, you know what, for an hour, I'm going to turn my phone off and watch some trash on TV for an hour. I'm not going to really think about anything. It's just stuff I can zone out to. Normal stuff I have to be intellectual about. But it's about creating space in your life and creating an intentional habit in your life where you can just come down, where you can just be with yourself and process. Because very, very, very important, something I highlight time and time again, you have to be able to go through those emotions. You cannot run away from those emotions. You cannot run away from those feelings. They are always going to be there if you try and do that. You need to learn how to be able to go through those emotions, i.e., you know what, right now I'm feeling scared about this move I'm about to make. And I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I'm going to pay my bills. I don't know what impact it's going to have on my family or my relationships. And you know what, I'm feeling really scared right now. That's a real emotion.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like, okay, that's how I feel right now. But if I don't do what I want to do, how am I going to feel? Actually, you know, I'm not going to feel great either. I'm going to feel really down. I'm going to feel depressed. I'm not going to feel like I'm enough. I'm going to feel like I'm valued. I'm going to feel like I'm a good, in my case, husband, father, all that kind of stuff. Mm. So I want to push through this. So, okay, I feel all this negative emotional stuff around the fears that are coming up. I see all of this stuff that happens if I don't do what I'm doing. And then I come back to, okay, so I'm going to push through. But I'm going to make sure that I process that feeling and that emotion all the way through, that I understand that the feelings that are showing up for me are real, they are valid, but I don't let them stop me. And then I have conversations with those around me as well. I have conversations with my wife and some of my good friends that we don't know, like this, I'm making this move and I need you guys just to be able to be there to support me, to listen to me. You don't have to talk, just listen to me. Just let me be able to share how I'm going through, and that in itself, be able to have someone where you can literally just talk situations out to makes a massive, massive, massive difference. We have an average, between 40 and 70,000 thoughts a day in our brain. So you're trying to sort all that out with your emotions is not the easiest thing to do. But having someone there where you can actually just speak out loud to them, and they don't have to necessarily say anything, it actually helps you to process and go through those emotions a lot better. But also having that time for yourself or journaling also helps and also works really well.
Wow, this has been very exciting, because I feel we've gone a full 360 and we're back to the same point. You know, to step outside your comfort zone starts with the mind. Everything starts with the mind. You need a healthy mind to be able to step outside your comfort zone. You need to be sane enough to step outside your comfort zone. You need to be able to move through the steps from being fear zone to the learning zone to the growth zone, to step outside your comfort zone. Sope, I think on a great note, I want to say thank you very much. This has been very exciting. There are a lot of things I've taken away from this. I might not be running after this talk, but I would certainly look for a habit. I actually have one which I've just recently started, and it's boxing, and I'm trying to make it a routine. So I'll tell you how it goes in the next 1 month, if I keep it consistent or not. Thank you to everyone. For those of you who are not aware of AFBE UK, would like you to check our website. I think it has been posted on the chat group, AFBE UK and AFBE Scotland UK. We have a lot of members, and certainly we have been growing in our membership base. We have a lot of corporate members, and currently at the moment, a lot of our corporate members have positions to be filled within their organizations, and this is one of the benefits of joining the AFBE UK. Once you join, you get access to all the membership benefits, So apart from joining programs like this, you get access to notifications on job adverts, and things that are available. If you're a student or you're someone seeking a job, being able to network with members of AFBA is a very good step. So we always encourage people to join us. We have the mentorship program through the transition program, where we have corporate mentors that we can recommend to people who want to grow within the industry. We also have the leadership program that hosts this program. And we have the next gen that helps with kids, coding, next gen, coding club, and a few other events as well. And most importantly, we also have the upcoming gala, which is, I think, coming up in October or just thereabout. So the tickets are on sale. It's a very good opportunity to network. It's a good opportunity to see a summary work of all the good things that AFB has been doing and is currently doing, and see, a large membership base, and, just get involved with the whole system. So I'd like to say thank you very much.
Roy?
Yes, Ollie.
Yeah, just a second. Just on the issue of the jobs, they are particularly interested in senior people, and AFB has a CV database, and basically these companies can look you up. So talking about stepping outside your comfort zone, some of that might be reaching out for a higher position, and you have the opportunity to do that. So I'd encourage everyone here, if you're, regardless of your background, put your CV on the AFB website after you register for membership, and who knows what can happen.
See, you've heard it from the horse's mouth himself. So put your CVs down, and there's always an opportunity. If you think that it's time for you to step up in your job role, now is the time. Don't think about tomorrow. Now is the time. So take that step. Thank you to everyone who's made time to join this event. I want to say thank you to my co-host Bumi, and thank you very much to our special guest Sope. This has been very insightful, very educative, and certainly I have taken a lot from this talk, and I want to say thank you very much. Thank you to everyone. Have a lovely evening, and till next time, we will be on a break for 2 months, but the leadership program will be coming back with a bang in the next 2 months, which promises to be exciting, with a lot of sterling speakers like Sope, who will be taking us all through the remaining half of the year. Thank you to everyone for joining, and see you next time.